You know the feeling, right? It's 2 in the morning. The house is completely silent. The city's asleep, but your mind is just racing. We've all been there. You get into that strange late-night headspace where every tiny little worry feels absolutely huge, and every random thought seems incredibly profound. It's a universal thing. Someone on Reddit, a user on the Night Owls forum, just hit the nail on the head. They said that late-night thoughts hit so much harder because, quote, the world finally goes quiet and we can hear ourselves. And that just feels so true, doesn't it? When you strip away all the distractions of the day, that inner voice gets a whole lot louder. But here's the big question. What if it's more than just the silence? What if your brain is literally operating under a different set of rules after midnight? That's what we're really going to dig into here. Is there an actual biological reason why your mind feels so completely different in the dark? All right, to solve this mystery, we've got to start by understanding these incredibly powerful, kind of hidden forces that are running our lives every single day. Our body's internal clocks. You see, there are two key systems working together to tell you when to be awake and when to finally get some sleep. Okay, first up, the one you've probably heard of, the circadian rhythm. The name itself is a giveaway. It comes from the Latin for around a day. Just think of it as your body's master clock. It's a tiny cluster of about 20,000 neurons deep in your brain, and it's the central pacemaker that keeps your entire body on a rough 24-hour cycle. But it's not working alone. That's only half the story. The second system is what we call the homeostatic sleep drive. So think of it like this. Your circadian rhythm is the clock on the wall that says, hey, it's about time for bed. But the sleep drive, that's the pressure that builds up second by second the longer you're awake. It's what makes you feel more and more tired. So when these two things line up, they create the perfect window for you to fall asleep. But what happens when we push past that window? Well, that brings us to our next clue. Because when you stay awake deep into the night, you're not just fighting your body's clocks. You are fundamentally changing the chemistry of your brain, especially in the parts that control your emotions. So let's talk about your brain's emotional gas pedal. It's called the amygdala. This is the ancient, super reactive part of your brain that processes core emotions, things like fear and anger. Now, what happens when you pull an all-nighter or even just stay up way too late? Well, research shows the amygdala basically goes into overdrive. It becomes hyper-reactive, making you way more sensitive to anything negative. So if the amygdala is the gas, then the prefrontal cortex, well, that's the brakes. This is the sophisticated, rational part of your brain. It's in charge of good judgment, impulse control, all the adult stuff. It's supposed to keep that emotional amygdala in check. But here's the problem. When you're sleep-deprived, the communication line between these two parts gets super weak. So you've got your foot slammed on the emotional gas pedal, and your brakes are basically failing. And you can see how this creates a really dangerous feedback loop. You know, a stressful thing happens in your life, and that often leads to sleep deprivation. That lack of sleep then messes with our emotional regulation. You know, the gas pedal gets stuck, and it can even weaken our immune system. This makes us more likely to get sick, which, you guessed it, just adds more stress, creating this really vicious cycle. Okay, so let's put the pieces together. We've got two huge clues. One, our body's internal clocks are screaming at us to go to sleep. And two, our emotional brain is running wild without any breaks. When you combine those two things, scientists have come up with a really powerful theory to explain exactly what's going on. They call it the mind after midnight hypothesis. And the key thing here is that it proposes this isn't just you feeling a little tired or moody. No, it's a specific, recognized neurobiological state. That combination of your circadian rhythm pushing for sleep and all that mounting sleep pressure, it creates a perfect storm for what's called behavioral dysregulation. Your mind is literally in an altered state. And the consequences of this altered state, they are not small. I mean, how serious are we talking? Well, get this. After you adjust for the number of people who are actually awake, the risk of suicide is 3 times higher between midnight and 6 a.m. than at any other time of day. 3 times. This chart just visualizes that risk in such a stunning way. So yeah, the raw number of suicides might be higher during the day, but that's just because more people are awake. When you look at the per-person risk, it absolutely skyrockets in those dark, early morning hours. It's like when our reason goes to sleep, our vulnerability wakes up. And it's not just about suicide risk. Not by a long shot. The mind after midnight hypothesis helps explain a whole range of impulsive and frankly maladaptive behaviors that just spike at night. We're talking about things like violent crime, substance use and cravings for things like opioids and alcohol, and even just poor food choices. Reaching for that high-calorie junk food when our judgment is shot. It's a clear pattern of behavioral dysregulation across the board. Okay, I know this all sounds pretty serious, and it is, but understanding the science behind it is actually incredibly empowering. It gives us a brand new way to look at our own late-night behavior, and it gives us a clear path to start reclaiming our nights. Here is the most crucial takeaway. The person you are at 3 a.m. is not the same person you are at 3 p.m. That late-night mind is working with a totally different operating system, one that's way more emotional, way more impulsive, and way less rational. Just recognizing this is the first and most important step. Don't make huge life decisions or trust your darkest thoughts when you're in this altered state. Treat that version of yourself with a little bit of caution and a little bit of care. So what's the best defense against the mind after midnight? Well, it's pretty simple. Be asleep. And that all comes down to good sleep hygiene. The sources give us a fantastic checklist here. A consistent schedule, yeah, even on weekends, helps regulate your body's clock. A relaxing routine before bed signals that it's time to wind down. Limiting screens to avoid that blue light, making your bedroom cool, dark, and quiet, avoiding stimulants like caffeine late in the day, and getting regular exercise, these are all proven ways to help you get back in sync with your body's natural rhythms. So let's just end with this thought. We've seen that being awake in the wee hours puts your brain into a measurably different state. It's not just about being tired, it's about being fundamentally altered. So the final question I want to leave you with is this. Knowing what you know now, what decisions should you never, ever trust yourself to make in the middle of the night?